Hello and welcome to My Secret Math Tutor. For this video I want to talk about the graph of sine and cosine. So of course these are two very important functions when it comes to trigonometry, and we want to be able to visually see what they look like if we make their graph. I'm going to start off by showing you some tips if you want to create these graphs yourself, and near the end of the video we'll explain why these graphs look the way they do, why they have this wonderful wavy motion. Okay, so let's first start off with building a graph. When I go to build just a basic graph of sine, there's a few key points I put on there to help me get the big picture. The first two key points I like to put down is where it takes on its maximum value and its minimum value. So the highest point on sine is at 1, and the lowest point on sine is at -1. The next thing I start marking out is some key places where its period starts and stops. For example, if I want to graph one period, I think of it starting at 0 and then stopping at 2 pi. Now it's important to note that the graph of sine doesn't really start or stop anywhere. It actually continues in both directions, but I would like to start off graphing one period, and then you'll see that we can extend that as far as we want. Okay, so I have the high point, the low point, where one period would begin and end, and now I want to think of the shape of it. The shape of it's going to be this nice S-curve. When we get halfway through at exactly pi, we should be going through the x-axis. So now we just want to make that nice S shape. So there's one peak, there's the bottom peak, and there's one period. So this is a nice basic graph for sine that I can start off with. And then if I really wanted other values or other angles, I'd recognize that this thing really does continue on. In fact, it just keeps going up and down with this period of 2 pi. So the next guy it hits out here would be at 3 pi on the x-axis, then it'd come back up at 4 pi, you know, away we go. And of course we'd go this way as well, so down. It would hit there at -pi and just continue on. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at the graph of cosine and get some key values for that. Cosine is very similar. I'd still start off with a maximum value of 1 and a minimum value of -1. Like before, I'd start marking some key values on the x-axis. I like to think of one period as starting at 0 and then stopping at 2 pi. But for this one, it does have more of a U-shape for it. The weird part is it's actually the same shape as sine, but it's just been moved over by a little bit. So let's see, the halfway point will be at pi, and I also like to mark the quarter point, so this would be at pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. It's at these places where we will actually cross the x-axis. When we get to the halfway point, we'll be at -1. When we're at 2 pi, we'll be all the way up here at 1. Alright, so let's draw it out. So starting up here, we're going down through the x-axis, bottoming out right at pi, going back up, going through that 3 pi over 2, or at least trying, and peaking out right at 2 pi. So here is one cycle or one period of cosine, and of course even this guy continues on. So it would drop back down again, bottom out, continue back up, and it'd go the other way as well. And this is what I mean by it looks exactly like sine, it's just been shifted over. You can still see that wavy motion, that S shape of sine, but it has been moved over. So some key values that of course we get for here is we have that it crosses through the x-axis at pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. And the next one out here, you can imagine going